hopefully you are getting these experiences that are pushing you in new directions and kind of seeing like, what are you drawn to? What do you like? But if you don't go to those places, and I mean like mentally, emotionally, to see like, is this who I am? Like trying to figure out, I think it's really helpful.
Welcome everyone to the TechGuide podcast, where we give actual advice to those wanting to break into tech or are looking for their next gig. We have David Boerger on the podcast to talk about content, career pivots, making your own luck, and a whole lot more. Super excited to have you on the podcast today. Welcome, David, to the show.
Thanks, Ryan. Thanks for having me. It's my privilege. The honor is all mine.
No. The honor is all yours because you have a sweet background that I have to ask about. You've worked in a Minnesota factory, an Alaskan salmon boat, as a Hollywood sitcom writer, which is really cool, a New York innovation consultant, a corporate comms writer at Verizon, content director at a blockchain-based metaverse gaming company, and you're now working with executives to help with their LinkedIn presence. These are all really cool things, but I have to ask, what is, out of all those jobs, what is a job you will never go back to?
Great question. I would have to say, even though I liked it a lot, I'm glad I did it, but the salmon boat in Alaska was tough because basically it's in the summer in Alaska. And if the sun is up, you are fishing and you are working. So those are, around June 21st, it's 20-hour days. It's brutal. And you're just, we would go out for like a week at a time on this boat. So you're not really showering or seeing other people. It's just the four of you on this boat. I mean, you're not going far out. Salmon stay close to the shore. So you're not like in the middle of the Bering Sea or something, but it's, it got long. The time moved very slowly.
I feel like a lot of it would be like, you're kind of sitting out there, like waiting to catch salmon. A lot of it would be like twiddling your thumbs, a lot of like mental games out there.
Yeah. It's actually like, it's a huge purse seine. So it's like a little boat goes out from your boat with a huge net, and then you want to scare the fish in between. So you're plunging the water with this metal cup. So it's even worse than just sitting there. You're just plunging the water over and over to keep the fish in the seine.
For 20 hours a day in summer as well.
Yeah. But I mean, you're in Alaska and there's like whales and moose and bear and stuff. So it's really cool.
Yeah. How long did you do that for?
Just one season.
You got in and you're like, I'm not doing this again.
Exactly. I bolted out of there. But, really cool to see what that whole life is like.
Yeah. What was like a big takeaway from that whole life? Like, what's a story you like to share about living in Alaska for a summer doing that?
Well, I was glad I did. I was working actually in the Minnesota factory, and a guy told me that people were making good money up in Alaska doing fishing. And so I didn't know anyone, but he said, here's the name of a guy you could stay with if you go up there. And so, for some reason, I didn't really call him. I just took the name, and I booked a plane, and I, really without knowing anybody or I had no connections. So I flew up to Anchorage and then took a little puddle jumper to Kodiak Island, and like the sun is setting, and I get out of this plane and I go to the phone booth. And I dial up this number, and it's like a fax machine. And the plane is just left. And I'm just like, what have I done? I eventually did find them like literally in the phone book there, and they came pick me up. But I stayed in their backyard, and I walked the docks for 2 days looking for work, and eventually found a guy who was willing to take someone with no experience. And so it really was just about, and this has happened a few times in my life, where it's just about getting there, like get to the place where the action is happening, and then make it. Once you're there, you can meet people, you can get in, and they get to know you. And so, literally going there without a plan and without that it worked out. Yeah.
How old were you when you did this?
I was like 22, 23.
Oh my gosh.
And if I had been there, the money was, I made $10,000. Like I was given a check for $10,000 at the end of the summer. If I had been there 5 years earlier, the same amount of fish, I would have made $50,000. So it just, the prices just were very fluctuating a lot. I think it's a hard business today, I think too. So, if you're a little late to the party, sometimes you miss out.
Yeah. But I do want to talk about like getting there without a plan and just kind of figuring out as you go. I feel like that would be an experience in itself that you like hold merit throughout your whole life, just kind of on the back of your mind. I mean, how is that experience of going to Alaska, seeing the plane leave, not having work, not knowing anybody? How is that like, how has that impacted you in a way?
It's funny because as a screenwriter, which I later became a screenwriter, it's like any challenge, any obstacle that doesn't kill you makes for a better story, really. I mean, so that's what I try to tell myself. Like if I'm out hiking by myself and I get lost or something, it's like, well, this is going to make a better story. And
For sure.
Just try to see the positive of it. You know, it makes life more interesting, if nothing else.
That's right. It does make life pretty interesting when you live very spontaneously. I feel like at 22, 23, I mean, I'm 24, but like we are still like kind of like bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, like, oh, like what's out there in the world to go explore. And I feel like that's something you just carry with you your whole life.
Yeah. And I think especially your 20s, you should be doing that. Hopefully you are getting these experiences that are pushing you in new directions and kind of seeing like, what are you drawn to? What do you like? But if you don't go to those places, and I mean like mentally, emotionally, to see like, is this who I am? Like trying to figure out, you know, I think it's really helpful. And if you don't have kids and married and everything, you know, like that's the time to do it.
Yeah, for sure. That's like been the biggest thing for me, like in my like young to mid 20s, is like really understanding like who I am as a person, and building that foundation I can then grow on. So when I'm 27, 28, like I am like, it is always changing. You are always changing as a person, but it's like building that solid foundation and being okay being alone, and being okay because you've had all these experiences of hiking by yourself and getting lost, or going to a new country or to a new state by yourself and just figuring out as you go. I feel like it is like very beneficial to look back on.
Yeah. And I would say also the thing is you have these, like I have these interesting experiences and they would help, not that they would be related to the job I was applying for, but they would help just break the ice with, oh, yeah, here's a story, you know, about me in Alaska. And it was always, they're like, oh, they perked up their ears like, wow, that's interesting. And it kind of makes you a more interesting, you know, potential employee. And a lot of times people just want to have interesting people around, you know, they just, I think it helps get jobs, even if it's not in the industry you're applying for.
Yeah. I feel like being an interesting person, one, to finding a job is like a great thing, but also to like find like a relationship as well. It's important to be an interesting person to have like cool experiences like this. I want to talk about a cool experience as well. So you went from Alaskan salmon boat to a Hollywood sitcom writer. Like how does that all kind of come together?
Well, it doesn't make sense, but just no. So I went back to back to Minnesota after Alaska, and I think back in the factory working at this gear drive factory. I wanted to be a Hollywood screenwriter, but I didn't know anyone. I had no contacts. I'd never really been to LA. And so my local screenwriting teacher said, well, why don't you apply at a film school? And I was looking at like Midwest film schools. And he's like, you should try USC because it gets you to LA. And so that was the top rated film school. And so I didn't think I had a shot there, but I applied and it asked for a writing sample. And so I just submitted a 5-page short story, which was not very much, but I figured at least it would get read. I got accepted. And so I think that's like, you miss every shot you don't take. So, you know, go for it's really not a bad thing if you don't get these sort of Hail Mary shots, you know, we're really going for your big dream. Go after your big dream because you know, then you won't regret it later. At least you tried. And so I moved out to LA for film school. I met a bunch of people in film school. You know, it was a lot of money even back then. So I'm not even sure I would recommend film school today, but it got me meeting people, right? So I'm learning my craft and I'm meeting people. And it was actually somebody who was not super popular among our class. We were about 25 people at USC. Not everybody was as liked as some other, but I tried to be nice to everyone and get to know everyone. And another example of, I heard about the Sundance Film Festival. I didn't have enough money for a festival pass, but I thought I'll go anyway just to check it out. Yeah. So they heard I was going to drive my car from LA up to Utah. And they said, well, look, this person, again, who I had befriended, they're like, I'm working at this company. This executive needs someone to pick up his tickets up there, his ticket package. Could you just do that? Pick up his package for him and then give it to him. So I said, sure. So I got up there. There's like a huge snowstorm in Sundance. I get his ticket package. All the tickets to the films, tickets to the parties. And then I just go back to my room. I wait for him to call. He never calls. In a week, he never calls. And so I just go to all the films and I go to all the parties as Tom Warner, which was his name. And so it's sort of, again, about making your own luck. You sort of, you push yourself out there and things tend to happen. The universe tends to work in your favor if you give it a chance.
That is such a cool story. One aspect that really stood out to me at the beginning of that story is you moved to LA because that's where a lot of that's where film's at. Like, it's in LA. Like, USC is like film. That's what I think is like really important to consider, or like that I've considered my career, is if I want to move to a place where like I know a lot of people are like, what I want to be in 5 years. That's why like I chose Austin, Texas as a city, because I know there's so many creators here and so many entrepreneurs here, kind of similar to like what you did at USC.
Yeah, totally. I was thinking, even before I knew you lived in Austin, I was going to suggest it as a place to live. If you're interested in tech or being a creator, it's such a great place. And you're just meeting other people. Yeah. There's companies there. It's something about being in the zeitgeist, which I think is really helpful.
Yeah. Being in the what? The zeitgeist?
Yeah, it's like there's just sort of a flavor. Like, LA is very much a company town. Like, it's all about TV and film. So you go to a party, everyone there is somehow related to the industry. You know, so that has its positives and negatives. But if you're looking for work, if you're trying to make a career of it, it really helps to be there physically. And I think a lot of people right now, they can work remote, and there's pluses and minuses to that. If you're just in your basement, you're not having those like water cooler or coffee shop connections that you'd make if you were there.
Exactly. And that's how I can relate to that as well. So I lived in Boston actually before I moved down to Austin. And in Boston, every conversation, this is how you start a conversation, like, oh, like, hi, my name's Ryan. Like, where did you go to school? Like, it was all like, because it's all Harvard, MIT there. And they're like, someone would be like, oh, I went to Harvard. Where'd you go? I was like, oh, I went to the University of Iowa with a 87% acceptance rate. It was just not like the vibe I wanted to be talking about, like schools and stuff. And it's like, I want to be an entrepreneur, like be a creator, like let me move down to a place. And that's been like so important for my career. And anyone listening that is young in their career, like consider what you want to be in 5 years. I'd say you'd say the same thing. Like consider what you want to be in 5-10 years and go to a place that has that persona.
So did you know anyone in Austin when you moved?
I knew my roommate, that's it, because we went to the University of Iowa, but I moved to Boston actually without ever visiting, and I moved to Austin without ever visiting. So spontaneous adventures.
Good for you. And it's working out.
Exactly.
It seems like.
It has been working out for sure. And I want to talk about like creating your own luck as well, because obviously you went to the Sundance Festival. Tom Warner doesn't show up. You get to go to all of these. In the back of your mind, was it ever like, I'm assuming you were considering like, oh, I need to like be out there and like go do this now that this random luck and chance of Tom Warner's not going to show up. Like, I need to go be myself out there.
Yeah. I mean, it happened a couple of times. Like also after that, I ended up, because of that meeting, helping Tom, I ended up getting a job as a production assistant on a sitcom on Third Rock from the Sun. So that helped, first of all. And again, I was sort of thinking I should spend time writing. And so there was a night PA and a day PA. And I was going to apply for the night PA who would drive around at night delivering scripts. But the supervisor said, no, I think if you want to be a writer, you should be here during the day to meet people.
Yeah.
So, and he was absolutely right. I'm glad he pushed me that way, because then I did get to meet the writers. So I became a writer's assistant, which in sitcom world, it's like you're in the room with the writers. You're taking notes. You don't really talk. You're not really supposed to say anything, but you are, it's like another film school. You're hearing how they're thinking, how they break stories. It's surprisingly, a lot of thought goes into sitcom stories. And then after I did that for 3 years, so a long time. And then I got up the guts to say to the executive producers, I'd like to pitch a story. Could I pitch you a story idea? And they said, sure. And so I went in and I pitched an idea for a show, which I had workshopped a lot with friends, and they liked it. If anyone knows the show, John Lithgow's character, they're all aliens living in Ohio. So this was all about the stock market. And, at that time, this was like 99, a 2000 web bubble, like tech bubble. And so stocks were going crazy. People were talking about stocks like everything. So these aliens get involved with stocks. And so I wrote the first draft, and then we went into the room. Everybody pitched it up, made it funnier or made it better. And then we, had a taping in front of a live audience, and it was a huge thrill. And I got to, my parents were there, everything. So it was really nice. And then they asked me to be on staff. So I became a staff writer for the next year. And because of that, because I got my own job, then the agent from CAA calls up and says, "Hey, I'd love to be your agent," because you already have a job. Yeah. So, it sort of falls into place after that, but you really do. And you're talking about content creation, which I believe we all should be doing. And personal branding is really important. You have to go today. You just have to go start doing it. I really believe you can't wait for somebody. And when you reached out and said, "Hey, would you like to be on this podcast?" I didn't even really know that much. I'm like, sure, a chance, to be on a podcast and meet new people. Absolutely. So I really think that's important today.
Yeah. I feel like you view life in like a very opportunistic way of like, oh, I'm going to say yes to this podcast, even though like probably haven't heard of it or like, I don't know anything about it, but like just that opportunity to be on the podcast and like share your story. I feel like it's a very opportunistic way to like look at the world, and it's like super important to have in your career.
Yeah, I think so. I think you have to take advantage of the opportunities when they arise. And for example, when I moved to New York we're getting through my life. I like with each question, we're getting through another chapter. I moved to New York for a show to work on a Whoopi Goldberg show, and I met my wife out here in New York. So I gave up sitcom. Basically, you got to live in LA for to be a sitcom writer. Yeah. So I was looking for a new career, and I went to a focus group as a consumer, as a creative consumer. And at the end of the focus group, I just reached out. Everybody left, and I just asked the moderator, said, "Look, are you guys I interested in what you're doing? Do you ever hire?" And he said, "Wow, actually, we are looking for someone." And just because I just got up the nerve to ask, the question, and I ended up working there 10 years. No way. So again, it's like, you have to reach out. You have to be the one making the move. It's like, if I had known this with girls, I could have dated so much more.
As I sit here very single, I am also thinking like, oh, maybe I should just ask that cute girl out next time I see her on a walk. I like that though. It's a mentality of like closed mouths don't get fed. And as you do a sitcom, like as you honestly did with the Alaskan Salmon, like you went out there, walked the docks for 2 days, got a job, go to Hollywood, be a writer's assistant for 3 years, ask for the job, get it, or ask to pitch your show, get it. And then you move to New York, and it's just a consumer group asking if you can have a job, and you get it. So it's what I really appreciate from this conversation is just like, you have to ask to like get what you want. Like closed mouths like definitely do not get fed.
Yeah. And I would say also that, when I was a production assistant and they would say, "Hey, Dave, what do you want to do with your life?" For a while, I totally missed the boat. And I was like, "Oh, I want to be a film writer. I'm all about film." And I looked down on sitcoms. This is just my day job. And then after 6 months being there of people saying, "What do you want to do?" I'm like, "You're an idiot. You're working on a sitcom. Be a sitcom writer." Like it's the way in, right? So sometimes you got to, realize the opportunities that are just lying in front of you and take advantage of them.
Yeah. I feel like with a lot of things that it comes down to is like being calculated with, you don't want to be like have an agenda, but like being calculated with like the decisions you make and understanding like, oh, I want to be a film writer, but like this opportunity to be like a sitcom writer is like right in front of me. Like, and I probably might have a much higher chance to actually become that because I'm so close to it already. And so making that like calculated decision to actually decide and move forward with that.
Yeah. And it turns out, at that time, people looked down on TV. I think it's changed a lot now. Some of the best content is on TV. But the fact was back then, they had a joke that the Academy Awards writers, or the Emmy Award writers would show up in limousines, and the Academy Award writers would show up to the awards like in their Pinto, because there's just not as much money in film. And I think it's very hard to make a living as a film writer today. They're just not making that many films. Whereas TV, you're doing, maybe 9 episodes today, but 20 episodes at a time. It's just much more lucrative.
Yeah, I feel like that. Was that like a big? I don't know a lot of like the writer strike, but like, was that like a big part? Like, I don't know. Was that like a big part of the writer strike? Then I'm sure you were very plugged into that.
Yeah, I mean, there's been two. The most recent one was really about the streaming services, partly about, that Amazon wasn't releasing their numbers, or Netflix wasn't. So you didn't know how well your show was doing, and you weren't. Something like Stranger Things obviously was a huge hit, and the writers weren't getting any part of that.
Oh,
So there was about residuals related. That was part of it, was residuals related to streaming services. And as technology changes, those things have to be negotiated. And then now AI, a lot of talk, about how does AI work with writers, and protecting the writer, which is important.
For sure. And I'm curious in like your position, like in content now, like how are you leveraging like AI within like the content that you write? Is it like, what's that breakdown look like?
Well, I think it's, I think AI is amazing. And I think we're all going to be judged by how well we work with AI. And as we said, as these personal bots come out and you train your own personal bot, that's going to really help you or hurt you if you can't do it as well as the other people can.
True.
So I'm just getting into that. I'm paying for ChatGPT. I'm getting my own individual bots and trying to teach them my writing style. And so,
wow.
So like, for example, now that I'm on LinkedIn, a lot of it is about posting consistently. And so that is a lot of, not that you have to do it every day. I'm not saying that, but if you're trying like 3 times a week or something like that, it's a lot of content to over a year. And so AI can help a ton with coming up with topic ideas, actually writing drafts. Not that you're ever going to just put something out that AI has written, but it gives you a start. You're not staring at the blank page. Right. So that's all great. And then going back, I mean, like, for example, a great tip I learned just this weekend was that if you ask AI or ChatGPT for a specific, like, tell me 20 reasons why coffee in Boston is great, it will give you an answer right away. And it won't back up. It'll just stream of consciousness, boom. And you think, wow, the computer did this great. But if you then ask, what are 5 ways you could improve that answer? And you're giving it just a little more time, it will then immediately give you a better answer.
Interesting.
Because it's trying to give you a quick answer at first. And so if you give it more time, it will go further out into its data and do a little more mining. And it can sometimes really improve upon itself. So there's tips and tricks, obviously, with these LLMs and bots. And it's a constant learning process.
That is an amazing like prompt idea, because a lot of times like I'll use like ChatGPT for like my workflow when it comes to like podcasts, and like create some titles for me, and like more often than not, like the answers are like, like this like isn't that good, and like I'm having to like just see it and like kind of rephrase it, but actually taking a step further of like, how can you make this better, or like improve this, and giving it a few more seconds to go, I feel like is a really like powerful prompt. Actually, that's so simple. Yeah.
I just experiment, see what you think. I mean, obviously, also with headlines, like hooks are really important for LinkedIn posts to get people that you've got really basically 2 to 3 lines to get people willing to click more, see more.
Yeah.
And so they have to be really strong, and AI has great ideas generally of what's worked in the past.
For sure. Can you talk to me like what your workflow looks like if someone wants to be like, hey, I want to start creating content for myself to put myself out there, like, and I want to start posting on LinkedIn, like, and they want to start with one post. What's like a workflow that you would advise someone to like consider when crafting like a LinkedIn post?
That's a great question. And I'm evolving as we speak, because what I have been doing is just as things occur, I will jot them down. I mean, I'll try to keep a list of ideas that have come to me, and I'll go to that library as needed. But I think long-term, you have to have a system in place. If you don't have the system, you will fall off. And so there are systems out there that you can do basically, or you can set it up yourself with you have to have a calendar, and you have to be working ahead of time. Again, with AI, it's all changing, but I agree with you. A lot of times the answers are not that good from AI, at least initially. They don't know you. They don't know what you're trying to do. And so you have to change a lot. But as it learns and as you train it, it should get better. And, LinkedIn it's a very different style of writing. Like you shouldn't have a big paragraph. You shouldn't even have like 3 lines in a row. People are they're swiping so quickly. So you need to like space it out, and brevity is the key. So you have to keep that in mind. So I am still largely doing my own writing, but it's taking too long. Like I've got to increase the speed. And I think everybody does, especially like a CEO if you're a solopreneur or small business owner, even if you're a person trying to get into tech, it's good to have your own personal brand. You should be making content. Stuff that nobody else knows.
Exactly.
So definitely be doing it. Oftentimes it's just your take on things. Like the Barbie movie comes out. What do you think of it? What's your opinion? Or the Super Bowl ads. What did you notice?
Yeah.
And other people can find that interesting, right? Because you have thoughts that are going to help other people, process something. So
yeah, I think what's worked, I've like dabbled in like LinkedIn creation and whatnot. And what the posts that do the best for me is when I do like a personal take on something. Because like you just said, it's your personal thoughts, and like you have a unique perspective of the situation. And so that's actually, now that I think about it, those are like typically the posts that like do the best for me.
Yeah. I think the algorithm will try to put you in a box. Like it's a career site. So they want to know what your career you're interested in, and you should try to stick to that topic as much as possible. I would say like 70 or 80% should be focused on, in your area of interest of career wise. And then 20 to 30% can be more personal posts, like you're saying, that can really even be about your journey and any type, they love transformation stories, where you've overcome obstacles and you're the better for it, what you've learned, how you've improved as a person or as an employee. So those are good as well.
Yeah. I feel like I just love the transformation stories because like they're so easy to like resonate with, and you can think about like how how you've transformed in the past, how like I've transformed in the past, like when you're reading these. So I see those on LinkedIn quite a bit, and those are a really good framework as well. So I like that 70 to 80%, like what then like 20% of like those personal stories. Is there a framework that you use when you're like crafting the message? Are you doing like 2 sentences, like bullet points, 2 sentences, or does it just vary from each post?
It does vary, but I would say that hook is really important. So if you're having an image, you're really going to have 3 lines, and that's all that's going to be visible. And I like to leave the second line totally blank, so it's very clear and easy to read. So I have a first sentence that gets your attention, and then a second sentence that hooks you, makes you want to, see what's coming next. And then another great tip, which I think works oftentimes, is the open loop idea, that you sort of pose a question, and then instead of answering it right away, you go some other direction, or you give background, you give context, and then by the end of the post, you answer that initial question. So they're forced to keep reading to get the answer to that question.
Yeah, it's all about, as TikTok, YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels, LinkedIn posts come around, it's all about capturing their attention and keeping their attention for long enough. So I feel like an open loop like framework is a really good one.
Yeah. And also with LinkedIn, you want to be you can try to go viral. It's very hard to go viral. And I really don't think it often, I mean, not that it's not worthless. It can get you followers. So that's good. But if you're not gaining the right type of followers, it's not going to help you.
Worthless. Yeah.
Right. So if you're, whatever industry you're in, whatever job you're going for, look for those supervisors or, the decision makers. And if you can get those people following you, that's huge.
For sure. And like in a position as like you work with like an entrepreneur, or like CEO, like I'm assuming you're going after like their ideal customer profile. Like if someone sells to marketing directors, you're not going after software engineers. It's because with that marketing directors, that content's just going to resonate a whole lot more.
Right. And if I'm going after CEOs or small business owners, I'm seeking them out proactively. I'm finding them. Sometimes I'm paying more for LinkedIn to get Sales Navigator, so I can actually see what people their job titles. I can search by job title, and then you can see who's active and be active it doesn't matter so much about posting yourself. It's about comments that you leave on other people's posts.
True.
If you leave thoughtful posts, they're like, wow, this guy's smart. He's also helping me, which I appreciate. So you're giving of yourself, you're giving of your time and effort. And then they're much more willing to connect with you and have a chat.
I like that strategy because there's a lot of strategies for like LinkedIn outreach, and like you can use automation platforms to reach out to people, but actually like authentically commenting on people's posts when they do post them, I feel like is a much powerful way than just blanketed messages to them.
Yes. And Ryan, I wanted to ask you, it's a little off topic, but I keep seeing the idea of community. I'm involved in LinkedIn communities, and that's sort of a general community. Are you seeing like community come up a lot? Like, are you in the tech world or in your own life? Or does that resonate with you?
Yeah, communities like in person or like on LinkedIn?
Either one.
In person, definitely. Austin is a huge community, like build a community, like everyone's building some sort of community here. So in-person communities are like a very hot topic in Austin that I hear. What communities are you in? What church groups are you in? What clubs are you in? What activities, intramural sports are you doing? So yeah, definitely in-person communities are like a huge topic right now.
And how about like are you on Discord?
I'm not on Discord, unfortunately.
Okay, it's interesting because that's really big in the gaming community, and it's really spreading out, like even like knitting groups or reading book clubs. And the number of like 20 somethings has leapt. It's like doubled from like 25 to 50% now are on Discord in some form.
Really interesting.
So it's really interesting to watch that area. I think that's a huge, and if you're going on LinkedIn and you want people to follow you, these are a little controversial, but a pod of people that, you're supporting one another, especially if they're in your industry, that can be really beneficial. And also just emotional support, like as you're putting these things out there.
So when you say a pod, it'd be like getting like three of your friends or whatever, like colleagues together, and like you all post content, and like everyone supports each other and adds thoughtful like engagement.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, mine's sort of global. So I have a guy in Pakistan. I have a personal trainer in Scotland.
That's cool.
Yeah. And so I've got a guy who's like owns 7-Elevens or runs 7-Elevens in Arizona. And it's funny. We've become really good friends through LinkedIn. And it's great to see everybody's journey, see how, and you can, learn a lot from what they're doing. It just has to be authentic. You don't want to just be liking for the sake of liking. If it's not good content, that's not going to look good for you. So you have to be careful.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, I feel like community is a really big thing right now. And it doesn't surprise me that like mid 20-year-olds are like going on like a Discord to find community. Because I know like communities I'm involved in Austin are like a walking club, kickball, basketball, another kickball league. So people are just like, yeah, I'm in 2 kickball leagues, but people are just like craving. People are like craving being in like connections, and like if you can do that on Discord, great. In person, great. But also building like a pod on LinkedIn, I think is great as well.
I never would have guessed you were in 2 kickball leagues. That's awesome.
Oh, yeah, it's I have actually broken my wrist playing kickball in October. We had someone last night actually break their ankle playing kickball. Swear, and on our same team, we've had someone rupture their Achilles. So it's a dangerous sport.
Oh my God! Now, does that mean did you used to do dodgeball?
No, I did dodgeball in like high school, but I haven't played since high school.
Oh, okay, all right. That's funny. Well, I'd love to play kickball, but I understand. That's also like pickleball is actually a dangerous sport too. There's a lot of wrist injuries.
For sure.
Pickleball.
Yeah, a lot of it's just like, that's how I broke mine in kickball is I fell and I was trying to brace myself. So that's how it is in kickball or in pickleball as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, Dave, this was an awesome conversation talking about your journey, salmon boats to Hollywood to New York, and then a really good masterclass here with LinkedIn content creation. So thank you so much for being here today. Where can people like connect and like learn more about you?
I think the best place is probably LinkedIn, and they can just look up my name, which is spelled very strangely, Boerger. And I don't think there's barely anybody else with my name on there. So that should be, I'd love to connect with people. So please reach out if you caught this podcast. I'd love to chat.
And everyone, those links will be down below. David Boerger, thank you so much for being here today. Appreciate you so much.
Thanks, Ryan. It was a pleasure.